All right, guys, what's up? And welcome to another episode of How to Scale an Agency. I'm super excited for today's interview because today I'm here again for a second time with Kasim Aslam. And this guy is an absolute beast, a legend among men when it comes to the agency realm and just entrepreneurship in general. Just quick introduction. If you don't know Kasim, he's founded 5 7 to 8-figure businesses. 2 of them he's at exits, one of which was Solutions 8, which is a top-ranked Google Ads agency with up to 100 employees at one point. So this guy's going to really teach us his secret sauce around hiring, building a high-performance team, and how you can actually get to that level. He also partnered with Perry Belcher to found Driven, which is the coolest marketing mastermind on the planet. And he also helped co-host the Digital Marketer podcast, Perpetual Traffic, and served as a traffic coach to their community for many years. He's done so many things that I'm actually out of breath given his intro, but welcome to the show, Kasim.
Appreciate you having me, AJ. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's great to have around too. I don't know if I ever told you, but the last time you were here, that ended up being like one of our most talked about interviews. Like I had tons of people DMing me for weeks, and it's been the guest that we've had on that was the most mentioned in like conversations about the podcast from like community members. So yeah, people really liked it. So I had to have you back.
Yeah, I love hearing that, man. Thank you. You made my day.
Yeah, for sure, man. So for everyone listening, I know we usually go into a little bit of a backstory in the guest, but we're going to breeze over that and get to the meat today because we had Kasim on about 9-10 months ago. I definitely recommend going back to listen to that episode to hear more of like where he came from and his journey because it's really awesome. He actually has an amazing rags to riches story where he lost everything in the 2008 financial crisis, house foreclosed, car repossessed, but then came back and rose from the ashes. So really cool story, really inspiring there. I'll put the link down below to the first episode. But today we're just going to get right into the meat, which is really all about hiring and Kasim's PTO Talent System to find top performers for your business. So starting out with that, just first, Kasim, tell me a little bit about like what the PTO Talent is. I just at a high level, the PTO Talent System.
Yeah, the Pareto principle is the 80-20 rule, which I think everybody at this point is probably familiar with. Perry Marshall wrote a series of books.
Yeah.
Perry's a super brilliant cat, by the way, really worth following. 80-20 marketing is one of the best books I ever read. His whole concept of racking the shotgun I thought was brilliant. So I've been obsessed with the Pareto principle for as long as I've known it existed. And with all things in life, right? It's not just business. The Pareto principle shows up in every organic ecosystem. So like 20% of the criminals commit 80% of the crimes and 20% of the seeds yield 80% of the crops and like weird stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not truly 80-20. The idea is just conceptually, there's always going to be mismatched inputs and outputs. Where that factors in significantly in business, and there's multiple levels of analysis, right? Like 20% of your clients are going to be 80% of your revenue or more. 20% of your products are going to be 80% of your sales. The thing that always struck my imagination was 20% of your employees do 80% of the work. And AJ, it's true at every level of analysis. So if you have 1,000 employees, 200 of them are doing 80% of the work. But then if you zoom in on those 200, what would you say? 40 are doing 80% of that work. And if you zoom in on those 40, 8 are doing 80% of that work, which I did the math on this yesterday because I'm writing a book on the topic. That means that 8 people are doing 51% of the work in a 1,000-person organization. And what most organizations are built to do, and this is insane, by the way, like it's absolute, complete, total insanity. And it's also like the prescribed approach from all the Ivy League, Goldman Sachs douchebags with their business consulting. What they try to do is if the Pareto distribution is a hierarchical structure, and it is, and like all hierarchies, it's shaped like a pyramid, and your highest performing talent floats to the top of the hierarchy. So picture that for a moment. If you're listening, you have a pyramid in your mind's eye. And as you go to the top of the pyramid, that's where you have your Pareto talent. Those are the people that are yielding this 80-20. The entire lexicon that is the conventional business wisdom says to flatten your pyramid. And you see this all the time. They use phrases like key man insurance and say, oh, we need to redistribute risk. And it's because they don't like seeing existential crises on a spreadsheet. If you can see an existential crisis, that means we have to fix it, right? We have to fix the crisis. So they go and they do things like inhibit Pareto talent from being Pareto. And my favorite example of all time was in my agency. I had one guy, I sold my business with almost 100 employees. One employee managed almost 50% of our net profit. His name's John Moran. Most people know him now. He's the greatest Google Ads mind in the world, right? So your Goldman Sachs douchebag comes in and says, people are commodities, easily interchangeable. Just take John and redistribute his clients among 3 or 4 or 5 other high-end resources, and then you've mitigated your risk. Well, no, you've lost the revenue because those people were there for John. So the key isn't to mitigate the Pareto principle. The key is to take advantage of it and exacerbate it as much as you possibly can. Now, the risks still exist. I won't say they don't, obviously, but it's not as though you can participate in that upside without also assuming the risk. So it's a balance of risks. And there are ways to mitigate it. We can talk about that too. I mitigated it with John. He was an employee who became a business partner. I gave him a great big fat chunk of equity. When we made our exit, he became a millionaire. And we call those golden handcuffs, right? Because it's like, please don't leave me and take half my clients. How do I make you stay? So I was more of an answer than you wanted. I'm sorry I got a little long-winded, but that's That's the thesis of Pareto talent. And what's crazy is they're unbelievably accessible. And they're unbelievably accessible because most traditional organizations, big companies, corporations don't want them. They're afraid of them. They're actually, the world, the employment world is afraid of competence. And we could talk about that too. I think we all make that mistake a little bit. It's a reframe that everybody needs to make. But once you've made it, like, your whole entrepreneurial life changes.
Yeah, I mean, you said a bunch of times, I think in our last podcast too, that like your whole team, you felt smarter than you, better, whatever thing that they do, and that's exactly what you wanted, right? Whereas I think I'm curious your thoughts on when you said that a lot of people are afraid of that, but I feel like a lot of it is from what I've experienced. Some people are just they're like threatened by it, right? Or there's ego as well, like they just want to be the best one answering all the questions, making all the decisions, right? Not releasing control.
Dude, that's exactly what it is. People hire folks that they find to be manageable. And when somebody's manageable, that means they need to be managed. And
Yeah.
manageable usually means you feel equipped to trump them should the opportunity ever arise, or should the need ever arise. And I'd ask people to, maybe I should soften my tone too, because I was as guilty of it as every young entrepreneur. This is one of those moments where you have to get really introspective, because it's not at the surface. It's subterranean. It's very subconscious. But hiring somebody smarter than you is so intimidating. It's like, oh God, I'm going to hire this person. They're going to come in. They're going to realize I don't know what I'm doing. And what's going to
Yeah.
stop them from just like stealing my clients and stealing my employees and taking over? And what the interesting reframe there, and I actually experienced this with John Moran. And I would say this if John were on the show. He's one of my best friends, by the way. I love him to death, dearly. I wouldn't be rich if it weren't for him. John did something that blew my mind when we sold Solutions 8. Blew my mind, AJ. This guy can bill $2,500 an hour easy. He went and got another job. You know what I mean? I'm like, what are you? So this whole time I was afraid. I was like, well, gosh, what happens if John leaves, starts his own agency? What am I going to do? John went and got another job. There's a reason for that. And John will tell you, he's risk averse. He's not really an entrepreneur. He wants to do the work. He's an artist. He's a literal super genius who doesn't want to worry about like HR and billing and finance and ops and procedures. And he doesn't want to do those things. Most people are not entrepreneurs. And when you're hiring for specificity, and this is the key to not being usurped, when you're hiring for specificity, you're not hiring another AJ or another Kasim. You're hiring somebody who's going to be amazing at customer onboarding. Well, your customer onboarding manager can't steal your agency or your clients or your employees, right? Because all they're really good at is customer onboarding, or all they're really good at is optimization or Google Data Studio creation or media management or whatever. So as you get really good at hiring, the way to find Pareto talent is to get really specific about what you want. And when you get really specific about what you want, the way you can look, and I don't like this analogy in any other context, but the way you can look at it is an assembly line. The specialist on the assembly line can't all of a sudden start manufacturing cars, because all they know is this one thing that they're tasked to doing, but they're the best in the world at it. And they're way better than I'll ever be. Now, I don't like the assembly line analogy because it infers that people are commodities, and people are not commodities. And a commodity is something that's easily interchanged with somebody else. And that's where businesses go wrong too, is we're taught, dude, every business book I've ever read, every business book ever published, either directly or by inference, assumes people are commodities, which is also insane. You know what I mean? Like, that's not, people are literal miracles. The human being is a miracle. And to think that you could just swap one out with the other, that's tantamount to the psychology that would be necessary for murder. Like, people are unique, unbelievably beautiful unicorn snowflakes, dude. Like, I hate to sound so virtue signaling when I say that shit, but like, you can't just take one person and swap them out with another. And the fact that we build businesses in order to do that, it shows the hubris, right? But when you start to look at people as miracles, then when you put them in your organization, like, they become literal miracles. And it's crazy as an employer to watch people outrun you. It's so much fun. Because you're like, wow, all I got to do is sit here, and I have all these people that are way better and smarter and more equipped than me, and they're running faster than I could ever run with whatever ball I've handed them.
Yeah, and you have to be okay with just releasing that control, right? Like, so what you said really resonated with me, because from working with a lot of agencies, a lot of them have that fear of like, what if I give someone so much control that they just steal my clients or they just start their own agency? But like you said, we think everyone else wants to be a business owner, but most people don't, right? They're just happy just doing their one thing, or just not taking on all that risk, right?
100%. I mean, dude, it's I've seen it happen. I've seen people get screwed. It generally, to be honest, isn't Pareto talent that does it.
Yeah,
It's usually a really sneaky sales guy, to be honest with you.
yeah, for sure.
Now that I'm thinking through it, every single time I've ever seen that happen, it's a really sneaky salesperson. So watch your salespeople. But no, I think if you pay people unbelievably well, which is the key, winners want to win. You have to let them win. Money's how we keep score. It just is what it is. You pay people unbelievably well, and you treat them well. Like this, I see some of my peers doing shit like screenshotting desktops.
Yeah,
And they're like, oh, look, I can see I can see their keystrokes, and I can see that. And I'm like, okay, would you want to work under those conditions? You know what I mean? Warden. Like, what if they want to what if I'm having a bad day? What if I want to just watch Netflix or check out, or my kid has a ballet recital, or You know what I mean? Like, what if I want to have some freedom and autonomy and feel like I'm my own person? I'm not going to do that at your weird surveillance-ridden agent. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way to build a relationship with a person in that way. So pay people well, treat people well, and then show them ascension opportunity. And this is where people go horribly wrong too. One of the number one questions I get all the time now that this is my new soapbox is, well, how do I retain top talent? Guess what? You don't. Top talent doesn't want to be retained. Top talent wants to grow and they want to learn. And if they run out of growth opportunities and they run out of learning opportunities at your organization, they're going to leave. You can do one of two things. You can sit there and you can try to hold on to them, which means they're just going to midnight move out, or you can make it painfully apparent, hey, if you ever want to go, no big deal at all. Not only am I going to support you, but I'm going to end up being a referral partner. My only ask is you train your replacement. That's all I'm asking. And dude, I've produced Colin Schmelbeck, who's famous in the Google ad space. He was my employee. When I hired Colin, I knew he wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was like, dude, I need 2 years from you, and I need you to train your replacement. He and I are referral partners now. He'll send me work that he doesn't want to take because he decided to go like, super myopic and super focused. So the talent that you're cultivating and creating hopefully grows within your organization. And I've got tons of examples like that. Yvonne was my EA, became our director of automations, became our CTO, managed my entire exit, by the way, and is now a business partner. Like one of the smartest people I've ever worked with in my life. That's ideal, is they ascend in your organization. But if they can't, allow them to ascend out and everybody benefits. Because you're not going to keep people like there's a weird possessive psychology we have when it comes to that. And that's dangerous. Nobody wants to work for that either. Am I getting too soapboxy, dude? Is this, you just edit as much of this out as you want to?
No, man, it's all good stuff. That's exactly the soapbox we want. Pretty much same as last time too. But I think that, that's why I love podcasting, right? Like, you come in with questions or some idea, but then it's the tangents that are the most fun, right? It's just kind of seeing where it goes once we get to the meat of it. But everything you said makes perfect sense. And I think, yeah, like it's funny that you said everyone asked me about retaining top talent because that was going to be my next question. But like you said, it's not about retaining them or keeping them to do what they do. It's figuring out what they want to do and figuring out how can they hit their career goals inside of your company, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Dude, I've had some people that just like, and in roles that suck. I got a young man who works for me. His name's Harsh. And Harsh he was an actor in India. The Indian film industry is 7 times the size of our industry, by the way. Like they just pump movies out. So there's a ton of like starving actors over there, just like they're over here. And Harsh needed someone to pay the bills while he was learning to act. And at Solutions 8, we used to listen to and score every single phone call we catalyzed. I had $100 million in ad spend under management. We catalyzed a lot of phone calls. So I had a team of people listening to these calls. Horrible job. I'd shoot myself in the face if I had to do this work.
Me too.
I needed somebody to manage it. Harsh comes in, and because it enabled him to do his real passion, which was acting and dancing, I've never seen anybody own that role better and more effectively. And it's because the ascension, the growth was meta. It wasn't the role, but it was tied to the role. So my current EA is a really good example of that. She's a child psychologist in Argentina. Brilliant young woman. One of the best I've ever had. So conscientious. I travel a lot, and she'll conjugate her communication to me based off of the time zone that I'm currently in. Like really, really, really thoughtful.
Yeah.
Her goal in life isn't to be my EA. It's to be a child psychologist. She wants to help kids. But the average Argentinian makes $300 USD a month. So I pay her exceptionally well. She gets to coach kids in the morning, then work for me in the evening. So, ascension doesn't necessarily need to mean the way we think about climbing the corporate ladder. It's just like, well, gosh, how do we tie our incentives? How do we help everybody get what they want? And when you do that for people, and again, that's why people aren't interchangeable, you get just some amazing results. You get the Harshes and the Josefinas and the Ivans, and not to sound like such an evil, greedy capitalist, but I mean, dude, the benefits are insane,
Yeah, it makes sense, man. I mean, I forget where I heard this quote, so I feel bad not being able to attribute, but it was something along the lines of people aren't building your business, they're building their career within your business, right?
Wow, I love that. I'm gonna steal that from you. That's so good.
Yeah. Well, I stole it from someone else who we don't know, so we're both banned.
It's all stolen, dude. There's nothing I've ever come up with or said or done that I didn't just shamelessly steal, and I don't even try to attribute. Sure, you're a better person than me. I'm just like, that's mine.
Yeah, exactly. Too much effort. Yeah, awesome, man. So what does that look like for you tactically? Like, so when you sit with a new employee, new hire, you're really figuring out like, where do you want to go in your life? What are your goals in the future? Or how do you get to know that and be able to create that inside of your company for an employee?
Yeah, it takes time. So one of the things, my first piece of advice to every entrepreneur listening, every entrepreneur, business owner, founder, C-level exec, whoever you are, you should have an executive assistant. You have to, because you spend so much time doing garbage that's beneath your pay grade. Your time, if you're an entrepreneur and you don't think your time is worth some 4-figure sum an hour, then you're not playing this game properly. Your time is worth at least $1,000 an hour. And I don't mean theoretically someday, I mean technically, because I sold my agency at an 8X. exit. I took my net profit, somebody multiplied it by 8, and then they gave me that money. So as I was building my agency, I was actually working for thousands of dollars an hour. So too are you. It's just, some of it's a little prognosticative. If your time's worth $1,000 an hour, you have to look at everything that you're doing and you have to offload anything that's not worth that $1,000 or more. The way to do that as an EA. Here's the thing about EAs is if you give them 10 things to do, they're going to suck at 2, they're going to be okay at 6, and they're going to crush 2. They're going to be the best you've ever seen. In a perfect world, you take the 2 that they crush and you make that their new job. So my first EA became my director of automation. My second EA became my director of social. My third EA became my CTO. Like you don't have an EA for very long, but it's where you go to incubate this talent and figure out this is how we're going to place these people. And as you're working with EAs, you learn what helps them, what incentivizes them, what works for them, where they want to go. How do you craft this role around who they are? One of my EAs, Julianne, young lady in the Philippines, brilliant, dude. She was a professional bodybuilder, professional scuba diver, there's nothing this woman couldn't do. She was unbelievable. She didn't like waking up in the morning. She wasn't great at keeping time, let's say. Hopefully she doesn't mind me airing her out here publicly, but I'm about to give her a massive compliment. So as an EA, that's like a skill that you sort of need. You know what I mean? Like she has to keep the schedule. However, she was one of the smartest automations people I've ever encountered in my life, which right now might be the most important skill that exists. So that was the work that I started housing with her. And now she's the director of automations at Solutions 8. Absolutely stellar employee. So hire EAs with the expectation that they're not going to be your EA very long. You can cycle them out into the thing that is their superpower. What's crazy about the way that we manage people, and again, this is built into the business ethos, and I don't know why. If you give somebody 10 things to do and they suck at 2 of them and they're okay at 6 and they crush 2, everybody focuses on the 2 they suck at and they build them a performance improvement plan. And we're going to get you there, Johnny. And it's like, what do we just don't make them do those things.
Yeah, right.
John Moran, same example, smartest Google Ads guy in the world. AJ, he couldn't follow processes to save his life. Couldn't, wouldn't, refused. So John's running Google Ads campaigns, and then we have our project management tool. Now it's ClickUp. It used to be Asana. Before that, it was Teamwork. If John made a bid budget change, if he made a bidding strategy change, if he made a change in the campaign, the ask was go change it in the project management tool so we can keep track of billing, iterations, whatever. John, too smart, Tony Stark sitting there with his 3-dimensional vision, couldn't stop his workflow to do those things. The normal business owner, normal entrepreneur would have lost John Moran in the first quarter of the game because he wouldn't do the thing that they wanted him to do. So they would have stopped him full stop and made him do this soul crushing, TCM reports or whatever they're called. I just hired somebody to follow John around and change the shit as he was changing it. So like helping cater roles to people's strengths. Again, people aren't commodities. They're not interchangeable. So catering roles to people's strengths, that's how you build the business. And I love your quote. I'm going to use it because if people aren't building your business, they're building your career. Put a career inside of your business that allows them to build their business, build your business at the same time, right? Now you're building the same thing together. So take shit off of people's plates if they don't like to do it. Sometimes the job is the job is the job is the job. I needed somebody to listen to and score phone calls. That just is what it is. But that's far less often than we think. And having dynamic players and, peak performers, like that's the way you grow an organization. So I really like the hub and spoke model of starting with an EA and then ascending your EAs out. And even if you don't start with an EA, just get to know people. You're not going to right out of the gate. Nobody's going to tell you, oh, I want to start my own business. I'm going to be your competitor in 24 months. But if you build that trust and if they've seen historically that you help other people do that, I think over time you kind of get a sense as to where people want to go. And far more often than not, people become referral partners. I've had one guy, I won't say his name, we'll call him Santi, just so he knows if he ever listens to this, came in, helped build a Google Ads agency with me. And then when he left on really good terms. And next thing I know, he's sending emails to my clients saying, hey, I was the backbone of Solutions 8. You can just come over to me.
Oh, no.
And I sent him an email saying, hey, stop doing that. But that's 1 out of 20.
Yeah.
I feel like that's an okay risk.
Yeah, right. It's not going to happen as often as we might imagine. So your recommendation is first hire an EA, and I'm so glad you brought up the whole $1,000 an hour thing because I so agree with that. Right? Like I try to think about tasks I'm doing as if what would I pay someone else to do this? Right? Oh my God, I'm doing a $10 an hour task right now by making this invoice. Right? Let me get that off my plate. Yeah, I actually sat with a client the other day, an agency owner, and he was just doing a bunch of these low level things and just trying to figure out like who to hire next. And we calculated like how much profit are you making a month? How much are you working per day? This is actually what you're making an hour. So why are you doing this, which is 1/10 value, right? I feel like it's easy just to look at all the work we're doing as just like stuff, but not realize that most of it is, yeah, most of it wouldn't cost much to just pay someone else to do, right? Which means we're kind of paying ourselves to do that. We're paying ourselves $10 an hour for that hour, which makes no
You're
sense.
buying your time back. Yeah, that's the right way to think about it. Because I see people do this too, where they go, "Well, that task would take me a half hour, and it takes the person I'm trying to delegate to 4 hours."
Yeah.
And so the arithmetic doesn't pencil. And I'm like, your half hour is worth $500. Their 4 hours worth $40. That's a pretty
Yeah.
good trade. You know what I mean? Like, we just need to, again, just reframe. And the other piece of that too with delegation is stop caring so much about how shit is done. Like good enough is good enough, dude. Ship it.
Yeah.
And I realize that can go. There's the Steve Jobs of the world that everything is perfect, and the dad that taught him the cabinets that you don't even see the inner workings of need to be beautiful. Like there's a place for that for sure.
Right.
But that's artistry, not entrepreneurism, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like ship it. You know what I mean? Put it out there. Let's see, and then iterate. Don't just go with garbage. But
Yeah.
if you're delegating to people and you're like, oh, well, the square should be a circle and red should be blue. It's like, should it? Does it do the thing? Like, what do you want it to do here? Like, I need a box that things go in. Great. Does it have 4 walls and a floor? Will it hold shit? Great. Ship it. It's a box.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to the 80/20 rule, right? Like the 20% of the task that actually
100%.
matters,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if I delegate 5 things and those 5 things are done 70% as good as I would have done them, well, the extra time that I would have got back could benefit the business more than that other 30%, right? So yeah, totally get
Dude,
you.
I think it's Ed Milet. I forget who said, again, here we are not attributing quotes properly, but 80% done by somebody else is better than 100% done by me.
Yeah.
And that's 80% is a B minus, right? And dude, I'll go D plus,
Mm.
done by somebody else. Great. Because at least then I like my theory on delegation is it's the soccer ball. If you've ever played soccer, my youngest son is obsessed with it. You don't try to score in soccer until the very end,
Yeah.
right? So you just kick the ball down the field. And I mean, you're a quarter way to the goal and you're still just kicking the ball down the field. You're kind of getting it in the vicinity to the goal, but nobody's really shooting the score. They're shooting to position for a score at some point. That's the way to think about delegation.
Mm.
Don't try to delegate a task so that it's done. Just get it closer. Like, hey, I need to
Right.
switch project management tools. I don't really know which one to use. So let me hit my EA. Can you do me a favor? Will you research all the available project management tools that you think would work for our business, giving these 3 realities? My budget is this, and I don't want you to spend more than 3 or 4 hours on this research. Bam, done. Kick the ball down
Mm.
the field. And then they come back, and now you're a little bit further along than you would have been if that was a task that you kept for yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's the way I think to engage with some of those things, because to think that there's going to be a process for everything, a standard operating procedure for everything, like business is too messy. Entrepreneurship, it's just too messy. Like I like to prove first and then automate second.
Yeah. So talk more. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Proof first, automate second. Because I think that's really, really a gem right there.
This was a hard learned lesson. I kept trying to build everything to completion. And then, if you build a 10-story building and then you find out that the ceilings aren't high enough on the first floor, you knock that whole building down, and
Yeah.
then start over. And so to land that plane a little bit more effectively, like, with my agency, if we'd roll out a new service, I would, before I'd even start marketing the service, I'd have the new agreement in place, the new onboarding in place, the process management for the fulfillment of the service in place, the management SOP for the management of the fulfillment agents in place, the reporting in place, blah, 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 blah. And then we'd roll it out and figure out like, oh, the service needs to change, the price needs to change, the offer needs to change, whatever. So now I'm just like, the older I get, dude, the more I'm like, my new favorite thing, Jason Fladlin taught me this. I call it the Fladlin sales pitch. And you'll see me, if you go to my Facebook, you can see me do this a bunch of times. I go, hey, I'm thinking about launching a financial service agency for real estate investors. It's probably going to suck. I don't really know what I'm doing. I probably shouldn't even do this, but if you're okay being a guinea pig, hit me, send me a message and we'll throw something together. Here are some examples of what I've been able to pull off so far. So negative sell, negative sell, negative sell, negative sell, something pretty cool, right? At the very end, like just FYI, I'm not a complete dummy. I'm a real estate investor myself. I've been able to pull off some awesome reporting and I think I can do it for you too. And now I get these clients, guinea pig clients, I charge them next to nothing. I cover my costs, or sometimes I do it for free, but I get to figure out like, oh, what questions they have, what objections are there, what friction points are there. And then as I perform the work, I build the business. And most people are very uncomfortable building the plane as you fly it, but that's the only way to do it, because you're never going to get it right. So just like do the very next step, get some clients. Okay, I have some clients. Now what? Well, how do we communicate with them? I don't know. Let's go figure that out. Okay, here's how they like to communicate. And even that like little nuance, how people like to communicate. Every real estate investor, every single one of them without a single exception, texts. They won't touch email because they're all, spoiled multimillionaire on the golf course. Nobody's in front of their computer. They're not emailing anymore. They're texting. So how I engage with these people is critically important to the processes that I build. And I would have built that entire process with the assumption that email was our core mode of communication. Well, now what? I'm fucked. Forgive my language. Right? Like the whole thing comes crashing down with this new reality, this new understanding. So just one lesson learned changes who I hire to manage them, how that management is done, how the process is built, et cetera, et cetera. So man, just kick the ball down the field. Just get a little bit done at a time and then build it as you go. And that's how you build a better product.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think that's super, super valuable. I made the same mistake as well. I remember when I first learned about like systems and SOPs, I would just build all this stuff that like 90% of people wouldn't use. And I was like, what a waste of time for me to build that because I
Yep.
didn't know about this one thing, like you said. So a mantra I tell myself is effectiveness over efficiency, right? Like, let me just figure out how to get this thing done first and then make it efficient later with the system, right? But I mean, for you to build solutions 8 to 100 employees, you must have had like tons of systems that got really good at just that side of the business, right? So how do you balance that with building it as you go, where at that level you also got to have things like repeatable?
Yeah, you task the people who are building the system with building the system. So it's a meta concept. You never solve
Mm.
a problem, you solve the problem of problems.
Hmm.
So first of all, if I'm like I've never run a Google Ads campaign in my life end to end.
Hmm.
I built the largest Google Ads agency in the world.
Amazing.
If I go create the system for managing Google Ads, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. I shouldn't be doing that, right? So what I do is I'm like, hey, AJ, you manage Google Ads. Do me a favor. When I ascend you and you become a supervisor, what are the tasks that you want people to accomplish on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis? And you talk through it a little bit. I've got a great mind for process. Not everybody does. So if you task somebody with creating a process, you might have to pull the process out of them. But it needs to be the person doing the work, A. B, the management needs to happen where the work happens.
Mm.
That's why John's bad at following processes, because the management happens outside of Google Ads and he's just inside of Google Ads. Most truly brilliant people are really bad at process anything,
Yeah.
because for them, it's not a process driven. They're pulling, they're not being pushed.
Mm.
So it's really important that you keep, like, anytime a company has a wiki, I'm like, all right, good luck with that, because that shit's never being referenced or updated and it's just going to atrophy overnight, right?
Yeah.
If you could bring the wiki into the project management tool, well, now you have a fighting chance. But that's the key, is have the people who do the work build the process, number one. You can help them. And then what's nice about it is they champion the process. Because if I build the process and I tell you to do it and something breaks, you get to say, well, hey, dude, it's your process. If you build the process and something breaks, I get to say, AJ, what happened? And you're like, ah, shit, man, I'm so sorry. I forgot the thing at the time, at the place, whatever. And it's like, okay, cool. Let's fix the process. And the next time this won't happen.
Yeah.
So what you really want is you want processes that the implementers will champion. And the only way to do that is to involve them in the process creation process.
Yeah, the SOP for SOPs, right? SOP
Yeah,
system.
that's exactly right.
Yeah. And then they feel ownership in it too, right? They'll feel like I made this, right? Like they'll feel a sense of,
Dude.
yeah.
People get violent. Like people get 100%, just very territorial and defensive over the things that they've created in the organization. And it's going back to your quote, which I really love. It's because they're building their career, not your business. So if they built the process, that's part of their career. That's part of what they did. That's something they created. And yeah, I mean, they'll come back after the fact. And you can rope somebody back in and be like, hey man, what was it? And they're far more likely to help you if it's something that they built themselves and are proud of.
Right. I think a lot of people are probably excited to hear that, because I know creating SOP systems is a daunting task, right? But you don't have to do it all yourself. Any other wisdom or even just common mistakes you see when it comes to just like building systems to scale the business?
What gets you, they're actually pretty consistent milestones for whatever reason, but like what gets you to 300 gross rev won't get you to $1 million. And then what gets you to $1 million won't get you to 3, what gets you to 3 won't get you to 10, which is so frustrating. Like when I sold Solutions 8, we were approaching $6 million gross rev. And I just hurdled this problem. The way we structured the business was, it was based on teams. So every client was assigned a client manager who managed the communication. Behind the client manager was a specialist who managed the ads. And so the client manager would play middleman or middlewoman. And then there was a strategist sitting on top of them. So kind of a little triangle there, making sure that like the strategist was like the triple PhD mind who, if they needed help, they had it.
Yeah.
And that worked really, really, really well until we started to grow. We got nerd famous all of a sudden. And, my average client up until that point was spending 10 and 20 grand a month. Well, when I started getting clients spending a few $100,000 a month, they didn't want to talk to the client manager because they knew more than the client manager about ads. They were really sophisticated entrepreneurs. They wanted to talk to the strategist. My whole business model was, like ineffectual.
Right.
And I was already flying this massive plane trying to rebuild as we went. And that just sort of is what it is. So the thing that I wish I knew, I wish I had been listening to a podcast and some idiot was on there sprecking his bushy babble. You just can't be married to it, because as you grow, and that's the other thing, is you didn't do anything wrong. What you did was right for your size at the time. And then you're going to outgrow it. And here we are again, rebuilding the plane as we fly it. So that's always going to be the case as an entrepreneur. You're going to, because every new level you go to, you've never been to before, so you don't know how to necessarily accomplish it. And that's why you see, especially in the agency space, you see so many people grow to a certain level and then just full stop freeze. And a lot of them now, what I've noticed, start opening other agencies for other niches instead of trying to figure out how to get past that hurdle. Well, getting past that hurdle probably means whatever model got you there can't get you beyond it. So how do you reframe and rebuild your model? I think Alric Heck did this really, really well. Alric taught people how to run YouTube ads. So he was like a train your media buyer guy. Ended up exploding, super sharp guy. I think Alric was a millionaire before he was 12 years old or something. I forgot the exact story, but he was like teaching people how to do shit on YouTube on their iPhones and like had this massive YouTube channel when he was 12. Brilliant young man. And he reframed his business. Like he rolled out an agency after the fact, and it actually ended up being kind of a separate business within the business, but it's what helped him overcome the hurdle. Alric could be a good guy for you to have on the show. He's super sharp. I don't know how helpful that was, AJ, but that was the thing that came to mind when he said, like, what mistakes do people make? Good systems will, on a long enough timeline, fail you.
Yeah.
And you can't be married to them. You have to be willing at any point to like, okay, hey, that worked for me while it did, and now I need to move on to something else.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's great advice. So, don't hold on to it. Don't try to be attached to it. Just it's going to have to evolve with the business. And in the later stage of the business, I'm guessing you weren't the one like building the systems. Like at some point, did you have like a COO, or like what did your role look like towards the height of Solutions 8 when you were, 100 employees?
Yeah, Ryan Dice said this to me. I was complaining because all the things that I love to do, which is mostly content creation that I didn't get to do. And Ryan goes, dude, as soon as a business gets big enough, all of us just turn into recruiters and bankers. So 90% of my job was talent acquisition, which is what we're talking about here and now.
Yeah.
Which I'm really good at. And dude, I'm really good at talent acquisition because I love people. I love people. Before we hopped on the call, you were talking to me about like, how you chose where you live and the fact that like you didn't plan to move there, and just hearing those stories for whatever reason, like juices me. I get really excited. I'm like, God, what an amazing human. How brave you have to be to do that. And I think, I don't think that that's unique to me. I think we're all built to love people. And it's just something that it's like a door that needs to be opened because we're so used to in professional settings. It's like, here's my wall and you and I are going to engage professionally. We're going to shake hands.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to wear a tie. And it's like, well, if you can find a way to fall in love with everybody, that's really how you figure out their superpower and where they're going to fit in your organization. So it was recruiting, and then it was financial management. And dude, that part was not my strong suit. I ended up, again, because I'm really good at recruiting, I ended up with really good financial people. Since I made my exit, worst thing you can do to poor people is give them money because they think they're investors. So I made my exit. I've hired a personal CFO. So I've got a guy who works for me and does nothing but help me manage my portfolio. But that's such an important thing for an entrepreneur to learn. You have to learn how to recruit. You have to, because talent's the most important part, especially for the agency space. Agencies have 3 things to sell: people, processes, programs. Processes and programs, super commoditizable. People that's it, dude. That's all you got. So go be a recruiter, get really good at money. Money is so important. I've seen agencies that are minting money that run into cash flow issues all the time because they don't know how to play that game. Like there's just such a massive difference between being profitable and being nimble financially, like being able to invest in things and take things places. And especially for some of the young folks, I see young men and women. Every time I see a young agency owner post their new car on Instagram, I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go.
Here we go.
Like, dude, save that dry powder. Stop doing that shit. It's so stupid. I can get a Ferrari on Turo for like $400. You know what I mean? It means nothing. It just doesn't mean anything. So that whole I'm at my beach house with my whatever. It's like, that's the game you want to play. Okay. But God, I'd rather have the money. Because the money means so much more. Like the money is what is it? Money is the oxygen to business. And it's the perfect analogy because oxygen is not the most important thing in life, is it? Nobody hoards oxygen, wants oxygen, dies for oxygen. You don't even think about oxygen.
Yeah.
But you have to have it. And you have to have a lot of it. You have to have it all the time, everywhere you go, right? And when you don't have it, you're like, oh God, I'm going to die. That's money. Money is not the most important thing to business, philosophically speaking. Functionally, you have to have all of it. So just hang on to your dry powder. Because dude, I could hire people other people couldn't afford to hire. It took longer to train. I could fire clients other people couldn't afford to fire. Just be cash flush, man. Hang on to that. It was funny when you introduced me, you said a rags to riches story, and I laugh at that because it was rags to rags for me. I'm rich, but I got socks with holes in them, and I drive a 40-year-old Honda. There's a problem with that. I'm sure there's some self-esteem issues to it. But there's something about cash that for an entrepreneur, it's potent opportunity. And I have such a hard time parting with it because every dollar, like I can fly first class or I can start a new business. That's stupid to even think about. Like, why would I do that? All my friends fly first class. And I look at first class tickets. I'm like, dude, that was like $7,000. You out of your mind? I could start a business for $7,000. Maybe a little more than that, but yeah, that was more of a departure than you wanted to. That's what my role looked like, though. It was all recruiting and it was financial management. I lost my path a little bit. I wish I'd stayed in the content creation because that's what I loved and that's what really moved the needle for me. So for anybody listening, I think that what you're doing here, dude, like your podcast and the fact that you're providing value first and all those things. There's nothing that grew our business better, faster, and more effectively than that.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy you brought up the financial thing because I know we touched on it the first episode because you shared your story back then and how it taught you that lesson to just view it as dry powder, right? Stack it up. I've made the same mistake as well. Like I think a big mistake I've made is seeing a good month of the business and then assuming it's going to stay like that, and then investing more, hiring more people, whatever. Not realizing that like that's like a current peak, right? So I'm now more disciplined with it, but it's definitely a mistake I made of just not hoarding it, not holding on to it, right? I want to go back to talent acquisition, but what else would be if you think about like just real quick the 80-20 of money and finance, right? First thing you share was just stack it up, right? Like keep it there for opportunities. Anything else you'd share around the money side of things?
Don't be afraid to, this is interesting because it's contrary to what I just said. Don't be afraid to invest when you're in your space. Alex Ramosi said this. God, he's such a smart guy. I quote him maybe more than anybody else. And he quotes Warren Buffett. So I think I'm quoting Alex, quoting Warren. But diversification's stupid. Diversification's for people that don't know what they're doing. Like I'm in the agent, I've built 5, 7, and 8-figure agencies. So when somebody comes to me, I just had this conversation yesterday with a guy who has the perfect information that I would need to launch the perfect agency in a niche that I have complete access to. Perfect. I know for a fact, AJ, this is a 7-figure hit without question. I'll have 7 figures gross revenue by the end of this year. I'll come back on the show and you can call me on my bullshit and I'll show you my numbers.
I will, yeah. And then also I'm going to send you socks. I'm going to make a note of that. Send you socks
Yeah.
with holes in it. Those are my two to-dos. Yeah.
But dude, it's a no-brainer for me. So when you know your space well enough to know when it's a no-brainer, go all in. Like that's okay. I don't sell the farm obviously, but like it's whatever cash you're stacking, you're hoarding it for opportunities. When the opportunity arises, use the cash.
Yeah.
Because people can go too far in the other direction. It's like when you start hoarding money for the sake of hoarding money, and that's we've all met those folks. The miser isn't a role anybody wants to play.
Right.
So you stack cash waiting for opportunity, and then when the opportunity arises, make sure it's an opportunity know the industry. I have people come to me all the time, now that they know I have money, and that's what you end up being a prey animal, right? And I enjoyed an investor mastermind, and so like people come to me like, oh my God, this is a no-brainer. This biotech stock is about to split because of this at the time in Congress, and they're like, it's absolute guaranteed. And I'm like, I don't know biotech. I don't know Congress. I don't know any of this shit. So it's not a no-brainer for me and I'm out. Right. And then of course, 6 months later, it's like, hey man, what happened to no-brainer? Oh, well, the legislation. It's like, yeah, I don't know any of that shit. I know agencies really well. I know real estate really well. Like I play in those fields. And when I do, I was on the phone with my house or my little brother yesterday about a house. There's a house for sale in North Scottsdale it's for sale for $950,000. It should be worth $2 million. And I know this market better than anybody knows this market. And I know exactly why it's undervalued and I know exactly what to do to get it rehabbed. And I know it's no brainer. So use your money when you see things like that. Bet on yourself, be confident because, that's the accretion opportunities for money are pretty significant too. The other thing I'll say that you just made me think of is diversify your income. So I don't like diversifying from an investment perspective because it's like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm going to invest in these 10 things. Fine. The best thing that I ever did was have multiple streams of income. Little agencies with little mailbox money. I'm a high level affiliate. High level pays me 40 to 50 grand a month net to me, dude. After all cogs, like I split that with John. But having diversified income, you mentioned earlier, like, oh, I had a really good month and I assumed it was going to be a really good month. And the next month wasn't good. If you've just got one boat in your fleet, you don't have a fleet, you have a sink that's going to happen. Like the flood is always coming on a long enough timeline, boats sink, no matter what.
Yeah.
So you put a fleet together, and it doesn't mean you need a bunch of battleships. Maybe you have one battleship and 3 dinghies. Well, if anything happens to the battleship, you're still afloat on your little dinghy. My favorite business in the whole wide world, I own a Montessori agency that it doesn't even do $1 million gross rev yet. It's the most profitable business I've ever had from a margin perspective, and I spend 20 minutes a week on it. It's a great little business. I'd love 50 of those, as opposed to the $100 million hits I keep swinging at and missing. So I don't know. Again, tangent, but hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, definitely, man. So to expand on the diversify your income thing, what are your thoughts then on focus, right? Because on one hand, like I know that on the extreme end, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that they'll start one thing, then they'll start another, and then like none of these things are making money because there's focus is spread thin. So how do you like balance the two there?
Yeah, Perry Belcher taught me this. Perry's the smartest guy in the world. If you're not following Perry, you have to. Perry comes off as like an all shucks, tries to pretend like he's just a good old boy hick. He's freaking brilliant, dude. I bet you his IQ's approaching 200.
Yeah, he's a really smart guy.
Perry said every entrepreneur should have two businesses. You're building one business for cash flow and one business for exit. So that whole stay focused thing, people wouldn't have to keep saying it if we could do it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I think entrepreneurs are meant to find and seek opportunity. And I've had a lot of success in allowing myself a little shiny object syndrome now and again. Sometimes I
Yeah,
go too
scratching the
far.
itch, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly right. But I like the idea that you're allowed two, one for cash flow, one for exit. And dude, like the money from an exit, that's nuts. The acceleration opportunity there, you know what I mean? You just imagine like millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars and everything you know, but now you're just empowered with money. And the crazy thing about having money, this part was nuts to me. I've heard other people talk about this, is people ask you for less money.
Hmm.
Like for the first time, you're actually able to execute and do shit that normally you'd have to pay for. And now, like I can go to any mastermind I want, basically, and nobody's gonna ask me to join their mastermind or pay them their money. For the most part, at least in my industry, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I have to speak, maybe I have to whatever. But like there's all these, it's just this weird flip of an opportunity. So once you reach critical mass and there's this event horizon where, okay, people know you're successful, there are these doors that open that are unopenable otherwise, no matter how much money you have, or it takes a lot of money to open them. But then they open like just freely. And now it's just opportunities flow to me. The call I had yesterday that I told you, the 7-figure agency we're going to launch, just fell right in my lap. You know, I mean, it's somebody who has literally everything. They've got the Tinder and they've got the marshmallows and the chocolate and the graham crackers. All I have is a match and I get to eat their s'mores. You know what I mean? And they know that. That was part of the conversation. I was like, dude, you realize you could just do it by yourself? And he's like, yeah, well, but, you know, so I don't know. I'd work your freaking ass off to get to that point. And then from there, it's up to you where you stop. I don't have to work anymore. That's a lot of fun. That's a fun place to be.
Yeah. And when you say get to that point, you mean like first exit or just that point where
dude, know your number. So my
Yeah.
number was 3 million, which wasn't enough incidentally, but the number I had focused on was 3 million net to me after taxes. Cause in my mind, 3 million at 5% per annum, which is how much I could guarantee myself after inflation, which is insane. So I'm probably going to get 12%, right? But I know real inflation is 7%.
Yeah.
So 3 million at 5% is 150 grand a year. I can live on that forever. So now 150 grand is not like, you know, I spend a lot more than that. But at the time, that was my number. Like 3 million was my freedom number. I sold for 8 figures. I have a close to $10 million net worth. It was more than that. I got a divorce. Divorces are expensive, AJ. Don't do that.
I'll try my best.
Yeah. So, and you know, maybe it's a douchebag thing to share that, but I don't think it is because it's how we keep score. And now you know what my advice is worth. I've been able to produce $10 million. Alex Hormozzi's advice is worth 10 times my advice because he's been able to produce $100 million. So if I say something and Alex says something and they contradict each other, listen to Alex. But if I say something and somebody who's produced $1 million says something, well, my advice is worth 10 times their advice, right? And all the douchebags who show you their 2 comma word, but don't show you what their real results are, I don't think their advice is worth shit. Because I can spend 900 grand and make $1 million, right? I could also spend $1.2 million and make $1 million, right? Like the 2 comma club, gross revenue is a vanity metric. It means nothing.
Yeah.
So if we're going to have thought leaders and gurus and people that posit their opinions, I think they have to back it with something.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, the amount of money you made is like, it's like putting your degree behind you. It's like, hey, this is what I did. This is what I'm capable of. And hopefully there's more on the horizon. But so far, my advice is worth 10 million bucks.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, honestly, I think most people appreciate the transparency because there's not a lot of it out there. Right. Yeah, man, that's awesome. So I love all that. I think to wrap up, I want to definitely just bounce back to some of the talent acquisition stuff. Cause I feel like, you know, when you say, you know, getting to that point, getting to your number, like that's the way that you got there, or at least that I've heard you say that you've credited a lot of your success to was being able to find and keep the best people. Right.
Yeah, that's all of it. I mean, you hear me talk. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm really good at finding the smartest people in the room. And I treat them well and I love on them and they stay and they help me, you know, like
Yeah.
symbiotic relationship. And it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, for sure. So getting into that, so you mentioned before, hire an EA first, give them a bunch of stuff, just see what they're the best at, and then kind of shape their role from there. What about beyond EAs? Like how did you think through, I think a struggle a lot of people have, I have as well, is how do I know who to hire next, right? So how did you think about for all the hires you went through at Solutions A, right? How do you kind of think through that and like plan your next move?
You have to get specific about the role. One thing that I'm seeing now, because we have our recruiting agency, people come to us and are like, oh, we need to hire. And I'm like, great, what do you need to hire? And the thing that I've heard this a bunch is marketing manager. I'm like, oh, cool. What's a marketing manager? And they're like, well, They need to know graphic design and some media buying
Yeah.
and some funnels and automation and high level. And it'd be really good if they're good at content creation. I'm like, oh, okay, you want 15 people, right? Like it's just, and that's what we do as entrepreneurs. We get really greedy and we're like, God, I don't want to, I don't have the budget for a graphic designer standalone, but I need one and I need some. So like they try to squeeze all this shit into one human. And here's the thing, those people exist. We call them entrepreneurs. They don't want to work for you, right? They're going to go start their own business and do their own thing. If you're going to hire for a role. Now, when you find somebody for a role, do they end up being good at multiple things? Of course, because people are dynamic. But the employer-employee relationship is built upon the trust that is generated when you say, hey, I'm going to pay you to do this thing. And they do that thing, and then you pay them to do that thing. When somebody comes in and you're like, I need you to do these 15 things, you're not asking for an employee, you're asking for a business partner in so many ways. So the first thing to do is get really myopic about what it is that you need. And if you don't have the budget or the work to justify it, I promise you, you will grow into it almost instantly. So if you're like, look at your calendar, see where you spend the most time and what you want to delegate. So you might say, I spend way too much time doing audits. So I'm gonna hire somebody to do audits, but I really only spend 10 hours a week doing audits. I can't justify even a part timer to do audits. Hire the person at 10 hours a week and watch instantly. It's like the law of displacement. You will sell into that, and you give yourself that added layer of pressure so that 10 hours can become 20 hours really quickly. You're going to grow. It's like animals put into a cage. They grow to the size that the cage allows. So you need to take those friction points away from your business. So look at your calendar, see what you're spending the most time doing, hire for that role, make sure the role is ultra specific, and then give people the ability to expand on the role themselves. And you will end up with a unicorn. You end up with people that do 10 or 15 things, but they've expanded into it. You haven't come in and asked them to do all these things. And there's no way anybody's going to be perfect at all of those.
Yeah, it's just asking for too much. So then, and when we're getting down to the hiring, so talk a little bit about your philosophy of paying people more, right? Because I think a lot of people have that limiting belief.
Yeah, this goes back to people aren't commodities. We're taught to buy commodities in strategic ways, right? It's arbitrage. And so if you and I go to the grocery store and or that's probably a bad example. Let's say you and I are restaurateurs and we're going to go to like the bulk buy store and we're buying potatoes. We want the best potatoes at the cheapest price. Easy, which is how we think of all commodities. I want the best for the less. Right? The issue is we take that and we apply it to human capital. People aren't commodities. You can't get the best for less. That's not the way it works. As a matter of fact, one person in the different context can become the best if you treat them well. So people aren't interchangeable. They're not commodities. The key to finding winners is letting them win. Build a game they can win at. Winners want to win. Obviously, you can hire somebody who could be a winner and put them in a losing game. And we've all seen those people. We've seen our friends just get the soul sucked out of them because they're playing the wrong game at the wrong place. Money's how we keep score. So the first thing you need to do is pay 10% more than the high water mark. Now, what I just asked for is significantly higher than it might sound because you think, okay, 10% more, I can pay that. Well, wait a minute. I said 10% more than the high water mark. So you might right now say, and just to use round numbers and easy math, because it's easy for me to compute, you might say like, all right, I can probably get somebody in this role for 80 grand, but the high water mark is 100 grand. I want you to pay 110. That's a 30 grand spread from where you are, right? Like it's not 10% more. It's 10% more than the high water mark, if not more. Now, if you say, Kasim, I can't afford $110,000, cool. I have an answer for you. Go international.
Yeah.
Dude, and that's the thing. People are only willing to outsource what's called BPO, business process outsourcing. So they'll outsource data entry, cold calling, garbage work, right? The rest of the world is producing just as many smart people as we are, maybe more. So you can go get triple PhD. The guy, my personal CFO that I mentioned earlier, is a college professor, master's degree in economics. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You'd be shocked at what I'm able to hire him for, and I pay him 3 to 5 times what the average Argentinian makes. Go international, and you're going to find yourself with access to triple PhD employees. The average Argentinian makes $300 USD a month. I love Argentina right now because their economy was in free fall, but they're still phenomenally well structured. So reliable power, reliable internet, one of the highest college graduate rates in the world per capita, produces more economists than anybody else in the world. Great English proficiency, culturally aligned with the West, if that means anything. Christian countries, so you don't have to worry about holidays. Like close to our time zone, easy hires, the Argentinians. Average Argentinian making $300, right? So Americans go in there and like, I'm going to pay $350. No, how about you pay $1,200? Because here's what happens. All the best people go straight to you. And now you get to filter them out according to what you want and need. And then I tell people, I'm like, hey, I'm paying you more because I have unreasonably high expectations.
Yeah.
Seems fair, right? If you don't want a job where somebody has unreasonably high expectations, don't take this job. I'm paying you more, but I'm not paying you too much. I'm paying you exactly what this job is worth because I have unreasonably high expectations. So if you think this is a high paying job, it is because it's super demanding. Now, I'll never demand in excess of 40 hours. Maybe if I was a CPA, I'd say January through April, we'll be working 50 hours. But I don't believe there's every study ever done shows that that's an inefficient model. More time doesn't mean more productivity. I don't want you working more than 40 hours, but I want you working the hardest 40 hours you've ever worked in your entire life.
Yeah.
That's what I want. And when you pay people more and you put them in a position to feel like they're part of the team and they feel like real humans, and you're not screenshotting desktops, and you're allowing them to be accountable to themselves, and you're taking their input and you're listening to them and you actually care about them, you end up with what I had at Solutions 8, which is, dude, I had 100 people, close to 100 people that would have been the best person at any other agency they were at. I had a team of 8 players. You know, it was amazing. It was amazing. And I built the best Google Ads agency on the planet by no fault of my own. You know what I mean? I just hired really good people. I put them in a room together and I got out of their way.
Yeah, awesome. Love it, man. Well, for everyone who wants to dive deeper, there's an amazing 40-minute video that Kasim has on YouTube. I'm going to link it down below where he goes deep into like actually his hiring process and the steps he take and reviews a document of like, step 1, step 2, step 3, and more into the Pareto system. He also helps companies actually hire these roles and hire these 8 players through a new staffing agency he started. So I'll link that down below if you just want someone to do it for you. But yeah, man, it's been a pleasure having you on. I'm definitely looking forward to having around 3 sometime. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you or learn more or work with you?
You can go to kasim.me, Kasim.me. I'm writing a new book called Hire. So if you want my whole hiring blueprint, you can subscribe to my newsletter at kasim.me, and I'll be sending that out to my email list first for pre-order.
Awesome. I'll definitely grab it and we'll link that down below. Appreciate it, man. It's been great having you back.
Thanks for having me on, dude. I appreciate you.